If you're a Terraria fan, you probably fall into one of two categories. The first is the type of player who doesn't really pay that much attention to the fighting, to the bosses, to the exploring. They just like to build cool things. Second category likes the gameplay. They like to upgrade their gear and fight the next boss and get stronger and stronger right up until you beat the Moon Lord and you become the god of Terraria. Personally, I fall into the second category. I play Terraria for the boss fights. Ever since I started playing Terraria way back in the day, that's the main reason I've played it. But one of my other big hobbies is going to the gym and fitness. So I was thinking, how do I take my hobby of playing games, including Terraria, and my hobby of working out and combine them together? Well, the answer I came up with was to rank the bosses by working out. So over the last couple weeks, I've been making TikToks and YouTube shorts, posting them on ranking the Terraria bosses, but the harder the boss is, the heavier I lift. So today we're going to look at all of the Terraria bosses and then rank them by assigning a workout and how heavy that workout will be to the boss. One last thing before we get into it, all of these bosses are going to be ranked as if we were on progression. So we're not looking at all the bosses in the end game, we're looking at all the bosses as if you're fighting them for the first time. Start off with, we have the iconic, the legendary, the one, the only, the Eye of Cthulhu. Yeah, let's be real, this boss is easy as hell. That's a 50-pound chest press. Coming up next, not that much more impressive, is going to be King Slime. Also a 50-pound chest press. So, yeah, I would say these bosses, the Eye of Cthulhu and King Slime, honestly, depending on who you ask or depending on the day, either they're equally difficult. One could be easier than the other, one could be harder than the other. Next up, we're going to the evil bosses. So we got the Brain of Cthulhu and the Eater of Worlds. Now, in my personal opinion, I would say the Brain of Cthulhu is probably slightly harder. They're both around the same difficulty, but I'd give the Eater of Worlds an 80-pound chest press and the Brain of Cthulhu a 100-pound chest press. Now, I think this is because, and you'll probably see this with a couple of the other rankings in this video, the bosses that are newer, I struggle with a little bit more. Now, bosses like the Brain of Cthulhu, that even though they're technically newer than the Eater of Worlds, they've still been out for a long time, the majority of the game's life. That doesn't make them hard. I just say it probably makes them slightly harder than their counterparts. Next up, we have one of the actually first kind of challenging bosses in the game, according to a lot of people, and that would be Skeletron. Especially on expert mode, this boss is a lot more difficult than all the other bosses that have come so far. So Skeletron is going to get a 120-pound chest press. As we get closer to the end of pre-hard mode, let's take a look at Deerclops. Now, Deerclops is actually an interesting case because he is unique among all the other bosses. And that's because even when you die, you don't lose the fight because Deerclops doesn't despawn. So technically, that makes him really easy. You could fight Deerclops as the first boss in the game and get a guaranteed win because it doesn't matter. You just can keep damaging him over and over again, and even when you die, you don't lose the fight. So for that reason, really, he could be ranked as a 10-pound chest press or something like that. But let's say you're trying to take it, you're not purposefully letting yourself die over and over again, and you're actually trying to dodge the boss. It's a little more fair of a ranking. I would put him at an 80-pound chest press. Next up, we got Queen Bee. Now, this might be a little bit of a controversial take. I got some flack in the comments in the original rankings of these bosses, videos I've made so far. I originally ranked Queen Bee at a 150-pound chest press, even more difficult than the Wall of Flesh, even more difficult than Skeletron. Personally, I think that because Queen Bee is a bit of a newer boss than some of those other bosses, I struggle with her a little bit more than the other bosses, but I could totally see if you wanted to say Queen Bee is easier than the Wall of Flesh, or Queen Bee is easier than Skeletron. But for me personally, I would put Queen Bee at a 150-pound chest press. And for the final boss of pre-hard mode, the Wall of Flesh, he's another tricky one, because if you try to fight him with no arena, he's probably one of the hardest bosses in the game. But if you do your due diligence and actually plan out and prep the fight, he's one of the easiest bosses in the game, in my opinion. Taking all of that into account, because this boss is more tedious, if anything, than difficult, I'm going to give the Wall of Flesh a ranking of a 100-pound chest press. Now, before we jump into the hard mode bosses, we gotta have a little section for the Terraria invasions. Instead of taking every single mini boss that is included in all of these invasions, I'm just going to rank them as if it was all one boss. So each invasion type event gets one single ranking on the list. If you do want to see me rank all the bosses, including the mini bosses, that would probably be a pretty cool video. So let me know down in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. And while you're at it, if you could leave a like and subscribe on the video, that would mean a lot and it would really help out supporting the channel. Moving on to the invasions, starting off with the Goblin Army. Let's be honest, this one's a complete joke. 2 lava buckets or a single weapon that pierces completely trivializes this event. So the Goblin Army gets a ranking of 10-pound squats. Next up would be the Old Ones Army, which I'm going to give a ranking of 30-pound squats. I think the Old Ones Army can be one of the easier invasions or one of the most difficult invasions, depending on how you approach them. But they are pretty challenging, even with the right setup and stuff, as you get into the late game, into the harder tiers of the invasion. So I think they deserve that ranking of 30-pound squats. Next up, the Martian Madness. This is actually one of my personal favorite of all of the invasion events. I think it gives you some of the coolest items, but it is quite tough. Not as tough as the third tier of the Old Ones Army, but that Martian Saucer mini boss is probably one of the toughest mini bosses in the game. So the Martian Madness event will get a 20-pound squat. Next up, we got the Pumpkin Moon and the Frost Moon. Now, both of these are pretty similar in terms of difficulty, but I would have to say I would give a slight edge out to the Frost Moon as being a little bit harder. So the Pumpkin Moon will tie with the Martian Madness at a 20-pound squats, and I will give the Frost Moon a slightly more difficult ranking of a 25-pound squats. All right, and lastly for the events, we got the lunar events. Now these are a little bit different because you kind of can just like approach them at your leisure. They won't come and invade you. You can just go to them and take them at your own pace. Because of that, I do have to say, overall, I'd give them an easier ranking because you can really just take it at your own pace. Even though they are definitely the most annoying of the events, they're not necessarily that difficult, and I give them a ranking of 20-pound squats. All right, and on to hard mode. Oh, what's that? I forgot one of the invasions. Oh, Frost Legion. Yeah, 0-pound squats. Okay, now for real. On to hard mode. Definitely some of the coolest, probably the best bosses in Terraria, and obviously, definitely, as the name implies, the hardest. Starting off with the first boss of hard mode, Queen Slime. Honestly, kind of has the advantage of being one of the newer bosses, so it has that recency bias of being a little harder, but really, Queen Slime is just so easy. So, Queen Slime will get a ranking of 10-pound dumbbell bench press. Next up, the mech bosses. Now, personally, I have a very mixed relationship with the mech bosses. I used to find them so hard as a kid, but now, because of how many times I fought each of them, like, they're very, very hit or miss on whether it's a total cakewalk or a pretty decent challenge. And I think that really mostly applies to the Destroyer, because at this point, pretty much the only mech boss that can put up a fight at its point of progression, in my opinion, is the Destroyer. I'm so used to the patterns of Skeletron Prime and the twins that I never struggle fighting them. The Destroyer sometimes can be a little bit unpredictable, putting up a fight, being a little bit of a challenge, especially because it can kill you so quickly if it actually damages you with its head. But at this point, they're pretty much all around the same tier of difficulty. I think the twins are the easiest in my opinion. So the twins will get a 50-pound tricep pull down, and the Destroyer will get an 80-pound tricep pull down, and Skeletron Prime will also get an 80-pound tricep pull down. Next up, we've got Plantera. Now, Plantera was honestly one of the hardest bosses for me when it first came out, but obviously since then I've played the game a lot more, got a lot better, and now I gotta say Plantera is one of the easiest bosses. I feel like, especially if you do your due diligence and prep a good arena, Plantera is kind of just a huge joke, like really, really easy to beat. But she can still sometimes put up a fight, so I'll give her a respectable 30-pound dumbbell bench press. And Golem, you can probably guess what ranking he's going to get. Not a difficult fight at all. Honestly, he's easier than Plantera, but you have to fight him after Plantera. The progression doesn't really make any sense. Golem gets a 20-pound dumbbell bench press. Now we're basically on to some of the endgame bosses, and I'll start out with Duke Fishron. I genuinely think Duke Fishon is one of the best designed bosses in this game. Even if you know the patterns and you have them memorized and you're very good at dodging Duke Fishon, it's still a very engaging and fun fight, and it still can be challenging. For all those reasons, I will give Duke Fishon a ranking of 50-pound dumbbell bench press. Moving on to the Empress of Light. Ironically, in my opinion, doesn't suffer as much from that recency bias. I think pretty commonly it's seen as Empress of Light and Duke Fishon kind of being on the same tier of difficulty, and the impression I get is that more people would probably say that Empress of Light is a little bit of a harder boss, but I actually disagree. I think she's slightly an easier boss than Duke Fishon. I usually have a tougher time beating Duke Fishon rather than beating Empress of Light. So, because of that, Empress of Light will get a ranking of 40-pound dumbbell bench press. Right before the finale, we got one last joke boss, the Lunatic Cultist. Honestly, the Lunatic Cultist might even be easier than Golem for the point of progression you're at. You know, in some ways, it's kind of impressive for the Lunatic Cultist. I'm going to give him a 30-pound tricep pulldown. And last but not least, we got the Moonlord. Now, in my opinion, the Moonlord is definitely the hardest boss in the game. You're just trying to fight them fairly. It took a long time for me to get good at learning the Moonlord, and still sometimes he'll get the best of me. So, because of that, I will give the final boss of Terraria, the Moonlord, a ranking of 140 pounds, tricep pulldown. And that is pretty much all the bosses in Terraria. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and leave a like and comment down below. I'd really appreciate it. I'm currently working on making the similar series for the Calamity bosses. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check out my TikTok or my YouTube shorts, where you can find the uploads of the Ranking by Lifting series as they come out. And if it's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments, and I might make a video just like this one about the Calamity bosses once that series is over. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Daniel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.